4 people died in Cabin 28. The people who may have known why walked away. Keddie Resort sat beneath dark pines in Northern California, where cabins stood close enough for neighbors to hear almost anything. On April 11, 1981, Cabin 28 held a family, 2 young visitors, and one night no timeline could explain. At dawn, children inside the cabin found silence where voices should have been, and a room adults could not enter calmly. 12-year-old Tina Sharp was missing. Her absence turned a murder investigation into a search across the mountains. Sue Sharp, her son John, and friends Dana Wingate and Tina's sister Sheila's boyfriend were at the center of the first reports. Several children remained in nearby rooms. They survived, and their presence made every unanswered detail feel even stranger. The first investigators entered a crime scene already crowded with grief, confusion, and evidence that would later disappear. Reports described a hammer, a knife, and a missing weapon, but the record surrounding them would fracture over time. The back door was found open. In the mountains, that could mean escape, arrival, or a mistake frozen in panic. A neighbor later recalled sounds in the night, muffled, uncertain, and never enough to become a clean answer. Keddie was small. Rumors traveled fast, but the people closest to the case often seemed to know less than expected. Sue Sharp had recently separated from her husband. Around the resort, another man's name would return again and again: Martin Smart. Smart said he had spent the evening at home, yet parts of his story would later shift under scrutiny. His wife Marilyn gave investigators information that placed fear inside their own cabin before the murders were discovered. Marilyn later told others she believed Martin had confessed. The alleged confession was never tested in court. The first days depended on physical evidence: a crime scene, a vehicle, and a tool that should have been preserved. A car associated with Martin Smart drew attention. Investigators believed it might have carried an important piece of the case. A hammer believed connected to the murders was reportedly found in the suspect vehicle. Its handling became another unanswered question. When later investigators searched for the hammer, records suggested it had vanished from the chain of custody. Over the years, files, recordings, and reports became difficult to locate. The case was growing older, faster than its answers. For 3 years, Tina Sharp's family lived with the worst kind of uncertainty: hope that could not rest. An anonymous caller told authorities where to look. The message was brief, and its source was never publicly settled. Investigators went to Feather Falls, miles from Keddie. There, the search ended, but the explanation did not begin. The remains found near Feather Falls were identified as Tina Sharp's. Her disappearance had become a second crime scene. Who took Tina there and why? The location suggested movement, time, and knowledge of roads beyond the resort. The caller never became a public answer. Their knowledge was specific enough to reopen every theory around Keddie. A bartender reportedly found a napkin bearing a strange message after 2 men discussed the murders nearby. The note was treated as potentially important, but it never became the clear doorway detectives needed. Martin Smart's friend, Bo Bede, also drew attention. Both men had connections around Keddie, but no trial ever followed. Years later, Marilyn Smart described an alleged confession involving Martin and Bo. It was powerful testimony, but delayed and disputed. She said the killing may have followed an argument, but motive, like so much else, remained trapped inside competing accounts. Investigators examined whether tension between Sue Sharp and Martin Smart had escalated. The evidence never delivered certainty. Suspicion is not proof. Without preserved evidence, reliable timelines, or charges, the strongest theories remained only theories. The Keddie investigation was not just haunted by suspects. It was haunted by the way evidence and authority moved around them. Later reporting raised questions about relationships between suspects and local law enforcement. Questions are not conclusions, but they mattered. In 2016, investigators announced that a missing hammer had been found in a storage location connected to the case. The discovery brought renewed testing and renewed hope. After decades, even one preserved object could change everything. Evidence recovered late carries limits. Every lost year can weaken a clue before anyone gets the chance to hear it. Cabin 28 remained standing for years, becoming less a home than a landmark for everything investigators never resolved. In 2004, Cabin 28 was demolished. The structure was gone, but the case did not leave with it. Removing the cabin did not remove the night. It only made the unanswered rooms easier to imagine. Who arrived first? Who left last? The available accounts create a sequence, but not one everyone agrees upon. The open door, reports of a phone line cut, and uncertain vehicle movements all point outward in different directions. The surviving children carried memories and absences no file can fully hold. Their survival is part of the mystery's human cost. Witness memories shifted, retellings changed. In an old case, uncertainty can grow around even honest recollection. Marilyn Smart's later statements gave detectives a possible path back to Martin Smart and Bo Bubide long after both were gone. Neither Martin Smart nor Bo Bubide was charged in the Keddie murders. Death closed the door on direct confrontation. The case remains unsolved. Investigators have pursued leads, but no official conclusion has answered what happened in Cabin 28. Why was Tina taken from the cabin? That single decision suggests a purpose investigators have never been able to prove. Every missing item matters differently now. The hammer, early records, exact witness details, and whatever the first investigation overlooked. Cold cases change when old facts meet new questions. Keddie still has facts waiting for someone to ask differently. Keddie sat among wooded roads and scattered cabins. It was close enough for rumor, far enough for darkness to keep secrets. Silence can hide fear. It can hide sleep. It can hide someone leaving before anyone knows there was danger. The first detectives had a violent scene, frightened survivors, incomplete testimony, and a town already beginning to close around itself. In unsolved cases, the first mistake does not stay in the past. It becomes part of every later question. Decades later, new investigators reopened old boxes, compared old stories, and tried to recover the case from its own history. The renewed work produced names, objects, and new public attention. It proved the case was not forgotten. Attention can preserve a case. It cannot replace testimony, restore lost proof, or tell investigators who crossed that threshold. Everything returns to one morning, a cabin door, children waiting outside, and adults realizing the night was not over. If more than one person was involved, how did they leave without creating a story strong enough to survive? If one person acted alone, why does the case contain so many movements, objects, and accounts that seem to require more? Keddie resists the comfort of a single clean theory. Each answer seems to expose another missing piece. Sue, John, Dana, and Tina are not symbols of a mystery. They are the reason the missing answer still matters. A cold case remains alive when facts are protected from rumor, and when unanswered names are not allowed to disappear. Someone called and led police to Tina. That person carried knowledge the official record still cannot fully explain. most frightening possibility is not that nobody knew. It is that someone knew, and time protected them. It holds the weight of missing evidence, untold conversations, and a night that ended without a verdict. Today, Cabin 28 is gone. The forest remains, indifferent to the names, the files, and the questions carried into it. The Keddie Cabin murders remain unsolved. Until proof speaks louder than rumor, Cabin 28 remains an open door. If this case stays with you, share the question carefully. What happened in Cabin 28, and who still knows? For more documented mysteries that refuse easy endings, follow void narratives. Some files close, some never do.